chosen one. Stop scrolling. Heaven has pressed pause on everything around you to deliver this message. This is not a coincidence. This is not an algorithm trick. This is a final tribe calling a spiritual alarm set before you were even born. You're not here by chance. You're not hearing this by accident. The activation has begun. You who have walked with heaviness in your spirit, you who have felt different, distant, disconnected from the world and misunderstood by it, you've been set apart. You have not blended in because you were never meant to. And now, the final trumpet has sounded. The time for hiding is over. The time for shrinking is over. The season of watching others rise while you sit on your anointing, it has come to a divine end. This message is a trumpet blast from heaven, a call, not to the crowds, but to the remnant. You are part of the remnant, a soul marked with divine fingerprints, a voice meant to shake the systems of darkness, a vessel of light meant to walk into rooms and shift atmospheres. The world has tried to tame you, shame you, confuse you, but here you are, still standing. That's not weakness. That's evidence. Listen carefully. You are one of God's chosen ones. You were never random. The moment you were born, the earth trembled a little. Hell whispered your name in fear. Not because of who you were, but because of who you would become. That unsettling feeling that you were meant for more, that ache to break out of the ordinary, that was divine DNA speaking. The call has always been there. You just didn't know it had a frequency. But now the sound is loud. It is unmistakable. And it is final. This is the gathering of the set apart. The final tribe is rising, not in rebellion, but in obedience, not with chaos, but with clarity. You are not called to impress. You are called to impact. And when God sends out a final call like this, it is because something massive is shifting in the unseen realm. You've carried a lot, haven't you? People saw your smile, but not your warfare. They saw your kindness, but didn't hear your midnight prayers. Every tear you've shed has been collected by heaven. Nothing has been wasted. Not your pain, not your confusion, not even the time you thought you lost. Every delay was divine. Every detour had purpose. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. And now, the preparation season is closing. The spiritual realm has entered activation mode. Gifts are being awakened. Dormant callings are being stirred. And your name is echoing in the throne room of heaven. This isn't emotional hype. This is eternal truth. You are part of the chosen generation. You are part of the final tribe. The ones who walk in glory when others chase popularity. The ones who speak truth when others echo noise. The ones who kneel in surrender while the world stands in rebellion. You may feel unqualified. Good. That means God gets the glory. You may feel unsure. Perfect. That means faith will carry you. You may feel alone. That means you've stopped trying to fit into systems not built for you. You were never meant to be normal. You are a disruptor, a spiritual threat, a voice that breaks chains just by speaking truth. Hell hoped you'd stay asleep. But God just whispered, "Awaken." And it is written in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 52, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable. No more wavering. Chosen one. No more playing small when God has called you to take territory. No more spiritual procrastination. Your delay is not harmless, it's disobedience in disguise. This is not the time to get comfortable. This is not the time to mute the conviction in your spirit. This is the time to rise. And if your heart is pounding right now, if your spirit feels like fire is starting to burn through your bones, then you know this message is yours. Something in you recognizes the sound. You've heard it before in dreams, in moments of worship, in seasons of deep surrender. That sound is calling you home, not to a place, but to a position, your divine position. Comment 999 below if your spirit says yes. Not for the algorithm, not for applause, but as a declaration, a prophetic signal. Heaven is watching for the ones who answer. Like, share, subscribe. You've been scrolling for answers. Now you've found your tribe. Stay connected. This is your final tribe calling. You were never random. The ache in your soul, the heaviness that never quite left, the strange way you've always felt like a foreigner in familiar places, none of that is accidental. There is a reason you have always seen the world differently. A reason why your heart broke deeper. Your silence was louder. Your hope was harder to kill. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are marked. You've always been marked, before your name ever rolled off the tongues of men. It was whispered in the courts of heaven, before you took your first breath. A scroll with your purpose was sealed by divine hands. You didn't just arrive, you were sent. And the world has been trying to convince you otherwise ever since. But it's time to remember. The world called you sensitive. God called you perceptive. They said you were too intense. God saw a warrior in formation. They mocked your stillness. Heaven saw your discipline in waiting. Even when you didn't know his name, he knew yours. Even when you didn't recognize his voice, he had already assigned angels to guard your steps. There were moments you should have died. You felt it. Accidents that missed by inches. Depression that should have drowned you. Nights where the enemy whispered, "End it now." But something stronger whispered, "Hold on." That was not your strength, it was your assignment fighting for you. You were never random. There's something heaven has placed inside you that makes you dangerous to darkness. That's why you've been under constant pressure. Why relationships crumbled without reason. Why rooms rejected you. You've mistaken it as misfortune. But it's protection, divine isolation. Because what you carry can't be diluted. God needed to keep you out of environments that would distort your design. Even as a child, you felt the edge of something otherworldly. You saw things others didn't. Felt emotions that weren't yours. Dreamed dreams that were too heavy for your age. It wasn't imagination, it was the early whispers of your calling. A calling that has not expired. No matter how much time you think you've wasted, heaven doesn't operate on human timelines. You could have taken every wrong turn. You could have fallen, failed, and forgotten who you were, but God did not. Even in rebellion, you were still his. Even when you ran, he chased. Even when you chose lesser things, he preserved the greater. That's why you're still breathing. Because purpose preserved you. Destiny refused to release you. The world gave up on you. But God hid you for this moment. There are people walking around with platforms, influence, and followers, but they were never called. And then there are the ones, like you, overlooked, buried, laughed at, and yet heaven keeps circling your name. Because God doesn't use popularity as his qualification. He uses pain. He uses process. He uses the crushed, the rejected, the forgotten, the ones who had to learn how to hear him in silence, how to trust him in wilderness, how to obey him when nothing made sense. Chosen one. The reason your path was so rough is because your foundation had to be unshakable. The ones with shallow assignments get easy beginnings. But you are built for nations. Your legacy is bigger than your last name. What's inside you is not just for you, it's for generations after you. And it's not too late. We read in the book of Romans, chapter 11, verse 29, "For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable." Irrevocable. That means no mistake, no failure. No amount of time can cancel what God sealed before you were born. You don't need to earn it. You just need to return to it. You just need to remember who you are. And that remembering begins here with the truth that you were never random. And if you're wondering why this message found you now, this is why. The timing of heaven is never early, never late. God waits until the exact moment your spirit is ready to receive what your mind once rejected. And now, you're ready. Ready to step into what's been waiting on you all along. You don't need another sign. This is it. The echo in your chest isn't emotion, it's recognition. You're remembering now. And what you remember, you must walk in. Let the world call you strange. Let the people misunderstand you. Let the silence stretch. But don't let it fool you into thinking heaven is quiet. You're not in a void. You're in a vault, being refined. Not forgotten, being sharpened, not shelved. The activation has begun, because the chosen ones are awakening, and your name is still on the list. The truth is, darkness recognized you first, before you knew your worth. Hell already knew your threat. You didn't ask for the battle, but the battle found you. You didn't pick the war, but the war saw your potential and chose you as its target. Why? Because light doesn't need to introduce itself. Darkness always senses it first. That's why you've walked through so much resistance. That's why strange storms hit you when things were finally starting to make sense. That's why certain people turned cold, distant, or hostile for no apparent reason. They didn't hate you, they couldn't handle what you carry. Their spirit clashed with your calling before their mouth ever said a word. You weren't being rejected, you were being revealed. There are things about you that others will never understand. Not because you're too complicated, but because your frequency is divine. You speak kingdom. They speak compromise. You hear destiny. They hear distraction. You see patterns that others are still blind to. That's not pride, it's proof. Proof that you were born with a spiritual radar tuned to heaven's wavelength. And that's why the attacks didn't stop. When you grew up, they intensified. Because the older you got, the closer you came to activation, and every step closer to truth made you a louder threat to deception. Hell saw the trajectory. It saw what would happen if you ever healed, if you ever believed, if you ever stopped apologizing and started walking boldly. So it hit you with everything. It had betrayals, depression, disconnection, fear, confusion, and delay. It whispered, "You're not enough." It screamed, "You missed it." But what it never counted on was the God inside of you refusing to let go. You see, Chosen one. Every battle you've survived wasn't just about survival. It was about refinement. The devil tried to bury you, but he only deepened your roots. Every rejection stripped off what wasn't yours. Every heartbreak carved out more space for glory. Every silence taught you how to hear God's voice more clearly, even in your darkest moments. You carried something holy. That's why you've always been a disruptor, even when you didn't mean to be. You walk into places and the atmosphere shifts. People feel uneasy, not because of who you are, but because of what you carry. Conviction follows you, like a shadow. You don't even have to speak. Your presence preaches. Your silence unsettles. Your peace threatens their chaos. And the more you tried to tone it down, the more uncomfortable you became. Because dimming your light never made the darkness feel safer. It only made your soul feel suffocated. You were not made to blend in. You were made to stand out. You weren't designed to follow crowds. You were called to lead generations. That unease you feel when you're not walking in your assignment, that's not anxiety. That's heaven pressing on your destiny. You were born for this. The very things you thought disqualified you, the warfare, the trauma, the pain, are the exact things that qualified you to lead others out of it. You don't just carry survival stories. You carry blueprints. Deliverance isn't just something you received. It's something you release. You're not just chosen. You're dangerous to every system that profits from spiritual blindness. We find in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And that strength carried you through nights you didn't think you'd survive. That strength kept your mind when it was under attack. That strength silenced suicidal thoughts. That strength helped you love when you were betrayed. And that same strength is what hell fears most. Not your talents, not your looks, not your knowledge, but your unbreakable spirit. Because a chosen one who refuses to quit becomes a wrecking ball to every demonic lie. You may still feel broken in places, but even your brokenness glows with glory. You may not have all the answers, but you have the presence of the one who does. And wherever you go, heaven goes with you. You are not alone. You never were. Even in your lowest pit, angels were surrounding you. Even when you gave up on you, God never did. And now it's your time. Comment, I hear you. Lord, let those 4 words be more than a comment. Make them your declaration. Because something in your spirit already knows this is truth. Something deeper than logic is awakening right now. That's not hype. That's alignment. When you type those words, it's not for the algorithm, it's for you. To agree, to seal it, to rise. You've been quiet long enough. You've been running long enough. Let heaven hear your answer. You are heard. You are seen. And you are still chosen. You've been hidden. Chosen one, not forgotten. While others were being elevated in front of crowds, you were being processed in secret. While voices echoed from platforms, yours was being shaped in private tears. You looked around and wondered, why not me? You watched those with less depth, less oil, and less obedience rise in influence, while you sat in the shadows, silenced by delay. But what you thought was delay was actually divine protection. God hides his most dangerous ones, because premature exposure is a silent assassin. Anointing without refinement is a loaded weapon in the wrong hands. You were not created for quick applause. You were created for lasting impact, and impact takes time. Real weight is not handed out in haste. It is forged in the fires of obscurity. You weren't being punished. You were being protected from platforms that could have poisoned your purpose. Think back to the seasons that felt like exile. Those years, you questioned your value. Those silent nights where the heavens felt sealed. You thought God had passed you by, but heaven was watching the whole time. Every act of obedience no one else saw. Every time you resisted the urge to quit. Every time you chose prayer over panic. Surrender over striving. That was not unnoticed. That was preparation. You are not late. You are right on time. Those years in the shadows were building something stronger than charisma. They were building character. Something deeper than gifting conviction. Something more enduring than influence integrity. You were not being overlooked. You were being set apart. Because what God is about to release through you requires a foundation that can carry glory, not just attention. This is why the world never made room for you, because you weren't made to fit it. The systems you tried to enter, the doors that refused to open, the circles that could never quite embrace you, all of that was divine rejection. And rejection from man is often redirection from God. You were never meant to be in the middle of the crowd. You were meant to call the crowd out. You were never meant to echo culture. You were meant to confront it with kingdom. That's why comfort never lasted for you. God never let you settle. Because He didn't call you to be safe. He called you to be holy. There's a loneliness that comes with being chosen. You know it well. The kind of ache that keeps you awake at night, even when nothing's wrong. The kind of heaviness that follows you into rooms filled with laughter. It's not depression. It's displacement. Your spirit isn't home here. That ache is a signal. A sign that your assignment isn't just personal, it's prophetic. Because hidden ones aren't just hidden to survive. They're hidden to be sharpened. They are the ones trusted with mysteries. The ones God whispers to in the dark. The ones who carry answers to prayers others haven't even prayed yet. You've been forged in isolation so you can speak with clarity in confusion. You've been hidden so that your voice would not be polluted, so that your words would come out as fire, not noise. Don't despise the hiding. It is holy. Even Jesus was hidden. For 30 years. The Savior of the world lived in obscurity. No stage. No followers. No public miracles. Just carpentry. Dust. And discipline. Heaven's answer lived among them for decades, and they didn't recognize Him. That is the pattern of the hidden ones. Misunderstood. Unseen. But never unwanted. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the book of Isaiah, chapter 49. Verse 2, He made me into a polished arrow and concealed me in His quiver. That's you. A polished arrow, sharpened in silence, pulled back in private, held in tension not to torture you, but to launch you. When an archer pulls an arrow back, it's not rejection, it's positioning. The greater the pull, the farther the reach. And God's been pulling you deeper, further, and lower, because He intends to launch you wider, stronger, and higher. So breathe. This season is not punishment, it's precision. The silence has a sound, the waiting has a weight, and the hidden place is where the holy ones are carved. You don't need to be seen by many. You only need to be known by one, and He sees you now. Your name is already known in heaven. Your assignment has already been written, and the time of hiding is not forever. It is coming to its end. You are not buried, you are planted, and the earth is beginning to shake because your roots are now ready to bear the weight of what's coming next. The hidden ones are awakening, and you are one of them. This is not for everyone. This is for the few, the ones who have walked through fire and didn't let the flame consume them, the ones who were buried in silence but chose not to curse the soil, the ones who never fit into the crowds and finally realized that was the point. You weren't rejected. You were set apart. Because this isn't a mass invitation. This is a remnant calling. A signal sent from eternity to eternity, awakening those whose spirits have been crying out in the quiet, waiting for confirmation that they were not crazy, not broken, not forgotten. And here it is. You are part of the remnant, the ones who carry heaven's codes, the ones who feel spiritual shifts before they manifest, the ones who sense danger before it's visible, weep without knowing why, dream with precision, and walk with the kind of weight no one sees but everyone senses. You disrupt darkness just by showing up. You shift rooms without saying a word. That's not just presence, that's evidence. Your sensitivity isn't weakness. It's sacred. You weren't made to be normal. You weren't born for a 9-to-5 purpose. You were created to carry something that cannot be bought, borrowed, or stolen. And when God selects someone for that kind of weight, He removes the noise and the nonsense. That's why you've lost people. That's why doors closed. That's why some opportunities were withheld. It wasn't punishment. It was pruning. Because when God is building a remnant, He doesn't use crowds. He uses caves. He isolates you to ignite you. He breaks what needs breaking, so what's left cannot be shaken. He lets people misunderstand you to train you in silence. You've been trained without a title, anointed without an audience, purified without a platform, and that's how you know it's real. You don't need public applause to validate a private encounter. The world may have labeled you too much, too intense, too spiritual, too deep, but heaven called you set apart. You've always felt it. You've always carried it. You've just been waiting for permission to walk in it. This is that permission. This is that moment. The rising of the remnant is no longer future tense, it's now. We find in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 2, verse 21, those who cleanse themselves will be instruments for special purposes, made holy, useful to the Master, and prepared to do any good work. End quote. You've been made ready through the fire, through the tears, through the loneliness, through the wilderness. And now, God is placing His hand on those who stayed faithful when no one was watching. He's calling forth the ones who didn't sell out, who didn't water down their message, who didn't compromise their anointing for approval. He's calling you, and if this is resonating in your spirit, if something inside you is rising as these words hit your heart, then you already know you're not just scrolling, you're being summoned, not by me, but by heaven itself. This is divine alignment. This is the remnant rising to their feet and saying, "Here I am. Lord, use me." And if this is speaking to your spirit, I ask you genuinely, humbly, and with full clarity of purpose, stay connected. Because if this word has found you, then it's not the end of your awakening. It's the beginning. Don't disconnect. Don't wander. Don't let this moment pass like just another video or message. Let it root itself in you. Let it grow. There is a community rising, those who carry this same frequency, those who know that they've been set apart for something more, and I believe you're meant to walk with them. So like this message, if it stirred something in your spirit, share it if you know someone else who might be carrying the same weight, walking through the same fire. And if you haven't already, subscribe, not to follow a person, but to stay aligned with a movement that was written in heaven long before the first seed of doubt was planted in your heart. This is a place for the marked ones, the misunderstood ones, the set-apart ones, the remnant. You've heard your whole life that you were different. It's time to stop running from that truth. It's time to start rising in it. Because we're not here to impress the world. We're here to shake the gates of hell and prepare the way for glory. You are part of the few, and the few are rising. Some numbers aren't just numbers. They're signals, prophetic codes, kingdom confirmations. When God moves, He often moves through patterns, and some patterns speak louder than words. And right now, a divine pattern is unfolding before your very eyes. You've felt it. The shift in the atmosphere, the spiritual tension, the sudden clarity mixed with pressure, that's not random energy. That's activation. That's heaven releasing a wave of awakening, reserved for those who carry the seal. This is your moment, but it is also your mirror. Because this moment is not introducing something new, it's revealing what has always been inside you. You are not becoming chosen. You already are. There's something sacred about the now, something eternal, something too precise to be explained away by coincidence. That's what divine timing feels like. It's not convenient. It's convicting. You weren't prepared for this message, but your spirit was. You didn't plan to be here, but heaven did. And when heaven marks a soul, all of creation begins to respond. People start acting different. Environments start shifting. Thoughts begin to stir. Conviction deepen. Confusion breaks. That's not mood. That's motion. The kingdom of darkness is reacting to the fact that your spirit is aligning. The enemy knew this day would come. He just hoped it would come too late. But here you are. Not too late. Not too broken. Not too far gone. You are still on heaven's radar. You've been weighed down by battles you didn't sign up for. Spiritually drained from warfare. No one around you even noticed. You tried to explain what you were carrying, but there weren't words for it. You weren't being dramatic. You were under assignment. Even when you felt numb, even when you stopped praying like you used to, even when your faith felt fragile, that light in you never went out. It flickered, but it didn't die. That's why you're reading these words now. You've been drafted into a season of reactivation, a pulling back to power, a recalling of identity. Not the watered-down version of you. Not the you that tries to blend in to survive. But the real you, the anointed you, the fire-branded, God-breathed, devil dismantling you. The one that was formed in secret, but called to stand in the open. It is written in the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 28, and afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. That time is now. You are not being asked to watch what God is doing. You are being summoned to participate. This outpouring is not exclusive to pulpits and preachers. It's flowing through baristas, nurses, students, drivers, artists, mothers, teachers, outsiders, and misfits. People like you, ordinary in the eyes of men. but extraordinary in the eyes of God. Because when God activates His chosen, He doesn't need the world's approval. He needs your surrender. So, surrender. Not in fear, not in pressure, but in power, in clarity, in quiet confidence that you were made for this. Every day of delay, every year of silence, every tear shed in confusion, it's all coming full circle. You haven't lost time. You've been loaded with substance, and the world is about to feel the weight of it. What's rising in you is not ambition, it's assignment, and it's time to agree with heaven. Right now, if this is striking something deep inside, comment 1212 below. Let that number be your sign, a prophetic echo that you recognize. The gates are open. The number 1212 symbolizes spiritual government, divine order, and the activation of authority. It's a number of transition and unlocking. When you type it, you're not just interacting, you're testifying, you're aligning, you're saying, Lord, I hear you, and I'm stepping into place. Lo, comment 1212, not for the feed, but for your future. God is moving, and this number is your confirmation. The shift has reached your name. This isn't the type of activation that fades after the message ends. This is the kind that lingers, that speaks again in your dreams, that pulls on you at 3 a.m., that keeps your spirit awake even when your body is tired, because something is changing. You may not see it all yet, but the veil is lifting. The fog is breaking. You're not just watching this, you're waking up to who you are, to what you carry, to the reason you survived what you did. The darkness tried to steal your identity, but heaven is handing it back now, unapologetically. You are not the same after this. Your posture is changing. Your atmosphere is shifting. Your discernment is sharpening. The veil that was placed over your spirit is being torn, and underneath it all, a warrior is rising. Quiet, focused, marked, seated in authority, stepping into alignment. This is not hype. This is holy. The activation has begun, and you are no longer on standby. Comment 1212, because this number is not random. It's your confirmation, your agreement, your awakening. There's a reason the warfare found you early. Before you had language for spiritual battles, you were already in one. Before you knew what calling meant, something in the unseen realm recognized you were different. Your life didn't start in peace, it started in conflict. Some of your earliest memories carry tension, rejection, or fear. Why? Because darkness saw the glow before you saw the mirror. The enemy didn't wait until you were grown to launch the attack. He aimed for you in seed form. He hoped to intercept the blueprint before you could read it. That's why the rejection didn't start last year. That's why confusion followed you, even when you hadn't made any mistakes. That's why spiritual heaviness showed up in seasons that should have felt safe. You didn't ask for it, but you were born into it. You weren't born into ease, you were born into war. Because your very existence is a problem for hell. You are a threat. And the enemy's strategy was never just to hurt you. It was to confuse you, to twist the pain until it poisoned your identity, to make you believe that being different meant being defective, that being spiritually sensitive meant you were mentally unstable, that isolation meant you were abandoned, that your intensity was something to hide. But the truth is, you've always carried something rare, something pure, something sharp enough to tear through lies without even speaking. You've always walked with insight that others called overthinking, felt things others brushed off, wept over burdens no one else seemed to notice. That wasn't emotional instability. That was spiritual maturity in seed form. And the enemy knew if you ever stopped hiding it, you'd become unstoppable. So he struck early, in family, in friendships, in environments that should have covered you but instead cut you. And for a while, the lies started to sound like truth. You're too much. You're too fragile. You're too intense. But deep down, something in you refused to die. A light kept flickering, no matter how dark it got. A whisper kept calling you back. Something in you knew there was more. There still is. You see, there's always been a reason for the resistance. You don't attack what isn't valuable. You don't send distractions to someone who doesn't carry direction. And you don't launch spiritual warfare against someone who doesn't carry spiritual authority. The very attacks that tried to silence you are the evidence that your voice matters. You don't just survive warfare. You reveal truth through it. Because here's what the enemy never accounted for: that the pain would become fuel, that the trauma would become testimony, that the darkness would not dim your light, but sharpen your fire, that instead of breaking you, it would build you, that instead of making you bitter, it would make you bold. And now, you're waking up. The numbness is fading. The fog is lifting. The version of you that accepted every lie is being evicted, because what was hidden in you is now demanding to be seen. You are not here to live small. You were never created to blend in. The cloak of invisibility the world threw over you is burning, because heaven is no longer hiding what hell already recognized. You are a voice. You are a force. You are an atmosphere changer. You are a key to someone else's breakthrough. And you are walking proof that hell's strategy failed. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. And that is your truth. Fear is not your inheritance. Intimidation is not your identity. You carry power, not borrowed, not temporary, but eternal. And that power doesn't make you loud. It makes you effective. It cuts through confusion. It reclaims territory. It silences lies and wakes up destiny. You don't need to explain why the battle was so intense. The intensity is the explanation. You're not under attack because you're weak. You're under attack because you're essential. You are a disruptor in a world that thrives on spiritual passivity. You're not being dramatic. You're being drawn, pulled into your true identity by a God who never forgot who you were. And this is not your breaking point. This is your becoming. No more shrinking. No more second-guessing. No more trying to explain your fire to people still worshipping smoke. What God put in you is not for everyone to understand, but it is for someone to encounter, and they are waiting. They are watching. They are hoping you stop hiding, because when you rise, they rise too. So breathe deep. You made it through what was designed to take you out, and you're not done. You're only just beginning. There is a sacred demand resting on your life, and you can feel it now more than ever. It's not pressure, it's purpose pressing on your chest. It's the silent but unshakable weight of destiny trying to break through layers of hesitation, fear, and false identity. You weren't made for a diluted life. You were never designed to play it safe. Deep inside, you know this. That knowing has followed you through every stage of life. It's what made you restless in systems that seemed secure. It's what made you question things everyone else blindly accepted. It's what kept you from settling, even when settling would have been easier. You're different, chosen one. And that difference is not a liability, it's your confirmation. From a young age, you saw what others didn't. You felt what others ignored. You noticed patterns, sensed intentions, heard things beneath the surface. You knew who was safe and who wasn't. You could feel storms coming in people long before they exploded. You didn't always have the words, but you had the knowing. That knowing wasn't imagination, it was revelation. And it wasn't given to you so you could feel out of place. It was given because you were called to stand in the gap. There are people still breathing today because your presence stopped them from falling. They never told you. They might not even know it. But your discernment, your intercession, your quiet love, your unexpected text, your prayers in secret, all of it mattered. You have been operating in your calling without even knowing its full name. But heaven knew. Heaven always knew. And heaven has never stopped watching over the oil that rests on your life. That oil came at a cost. You didn't inherit it from a mentor. You didn't copy it from a book. You were crushed into it. The betrayal you endured, the isolation you faced, the confusion that nearly took your mind, that wasn't wasted pain. That was divine pressing. And from that pressing came oil pure, potent, and dangerous to darkness. You don't need to shout to carry authority. You don't need to be known to be powerful. There's a fragrance that surrounds the truly anointed. You carry it. That's why atmospheres change when you enter. That's why people confess things they didn't plan to say. That's why children are drawn to you. And the broken trust you. It's not charisma. It's the evidence of divine assignment. You don't need a title. The anointing introduces itself. Still, it hasn't been easy. The ones who carry the most often walk alone, the longest. You've questioned your own value because others couldn't see it. But the truth is, they weren't supposed to. What God placed in you wasn't meant for casual connection. It was meant for covenant alignment. And covenant is rare. That's why it feels like you've been waiting forever for the right people. That's why you've outgrown circles that once felt like home. Not because you're better, but because you're becoming. You are stepping into the season where you no longer apologize for your weight. You no longer minimize your depth. You no longer break yourself down into digestible pieces for people who refuse to grow teeth. The time of shrinking is over. This is the season of full expression, not arrogance, not pride, but holy clarity. You know who you are. You know what you've carried. You know what you've survived. And you're still here, still standing, still breathing, still believing, still discerning, still dangerous to hell. That is not by chance, it's by design. You are a part of God's answer to a generation drowning in noise and starving for truth. Your voice may not echo through stadiums, but it will reach hearts that no microphone ever could. You don't need the crowd. You need the call. And the call is active, right now. Scripture says in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I set you apart." I am set apart. That's why the road has been different. That's why shortcuts never worked. That's why compromise always made you sick. You are not rebellious, you're righteous. You are not stubborn, you're sealed. You are not confused, you're consecrated. And now, the seal is being activated, not just for survival, but for impact. You were not saved just to breathe. You were saved to build bliss, to break chains in others that once wrapped around your own soul. You are not the same as you once were, and you are not returning to who you used to be. You are stepping into the fullness of who you were born to become. There's a moment when the noise fades, and your spirit finally hears what it's been waiting for its whole life. Not another motivational phrase, not another surface-level affirmation, but a deep, resounding truth that hits your soul like thunder and water at the same time. That moment is now. You're not just hearing words. You're hearing your identity being handed back to you. The real you, the one that was buried beneath trauma, rejection, betrayal, and delay, is standing at the edge of reintroduction. The false labels are falling off. The accusations that stuck to your heart like chains are being broken. You don't need to strive anymore. You don't need to chase validation anymore. The war for your identity is over. Truth is here now. You are not who they said you were. You never were. The lies came early for a reason. If the enemy could convince you that you were unworthy, you'd stop walking like someone chosen. If he could isolate you long enough, you'd stop believing you were necessary. But here you are, wounded but not wasted, broken but not bitter, confused at times, but never fully lost. Because God never let you drift far. He never took his hand off your life. You felt abandoned, but you were actually being anchored. It didn't feel like protection. It felt like pain. It felt like silence. It felt like rejection. But it was God's hand, keeping you from the wrong voices, the wrong paths, the wrong alliances. You don't owe anyone an explanation for what God blocked on your behalf. You only owe him your obedience now, because something is awakening in you that doesn't need to be taught. It just needs to be remembered. You've always known you were different, not in pride, not in arrogance, but in frequency. You saw things others ignored. You felt things no one else noticed. You heard what wasn't said. That wasn't just emotional sensitivity, that was spiritual discernment in embryonic form. And now it's maturing. Now it's sharpening. Now it's being activated with fire. What the world dismissed in you is exactly what God wants to use. Your quiet strength, your unshakable empathy, your sensitivity to spiritual atmospheres, your loyalty even after being betrayed, your hunger for more even after being disappointed. These are not soft traits. These are marks of those who carry kingdom authority. You don't have to change to be used by God. You have to surrender. He will use what's already inside you, refined, but not replaced. This is the moment where alignment begins. The version of you that once tolerated dysfunction is no longer welcome. The version that shrunk back to avoid confrontation is being laid to rest. You've spent too long apologizing for being awake in a sleeping world. You've tried too hard to explain your fire to people still comfortable in darkness. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your obedience. What's coming next will require all of you. No more part-time faith. No more second-guessing. No more rehearsing old battles to keep others comfortable. You've passed too many tests in secret to pretend you're average in public. This is your graduation moment. The fruit of silent seasons is being harvested now. We read in the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. You didn't give up, even when it hurt, even when you wanted to, even when your hands trembled and your heart broke. You showed up. You prayed through tears. You kept going when everything told you to quit. And now, heaven is honoring your endurance. You are not just surviving anymore. You are stepping into spiritual authority, the kind of authority that doesn't shout, it shifts, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, it's felt. God is raising up those who have been crushed in silence and found him in the crushing. You are one of them. You are not the same person who started this journey. The process changed you. The pain purified you. The presence of God rebuilt you. And now, you're walking out of the wilderness with fire in your bones and oil on your life. So take a breath. Chosen one, you're not at the end. You're at the threshold. Comment, I choose my crown. Let those 4 words seal what your heart already knows. The season of hiding is over. The days of waiting for permission have passed. You're no longer hoping to be chosen. You're walking like you are. You're picking up what you once laid down. The weight doesn't scare you anymore. The crown fits now. Comment it. Not for likes, not for attention, but as your agreement with heaven. You didn't come this far to lay your purpose down again. You were chosen. You are ready. You are rising. Heaven will not hold the crown open forever. There is a window in the Spirit divine, strategic and short, and that window is open now. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not after things settle down. Now, this is not meant to frighten you, it's meant to free you. Because for too long, you've been asking for confirmation while God has been waiting for movement. The time for hesitation has expired. The delay that once protected you is no longer covering your procrastination. What you once had grace to stall on, you no longer have time to ignore. You are standing at the edge of something eternal, and it won't wait forever. This isn't about pressure, it's about positioning. You've been marked for such a time as this, and every time you ignored the tug, every time you stayed silent when your spirit burned to speak, every time you dismissed the dream, God still preserved the crown, but not indefinitely. You've been asking for clarity, for a sign, for timing. But this isn't a matter of waiting on God anymore. Heaven is already moving. The invitation has been extended. The oil is ready to flow. The only thing left is your response. And silence is a response. Indecision isn't neutral. Delay has a cost. You're not being asked to perform, you're being asked to surrender. And if you've been feeling the unease, the urgency, the divine restlessness that refuses to let you coast, that's not anxiety. That's your calling demanding your attention. God is not asking for perfection. He's asking for permission. He wants your yes, your full, undiluted yes. The kind of yes that doesn't wait to be applauded. The kind of yes that shakes the room because it comes from a soul that's finally done running. That's the kind of yes that heaven responds to. That's the kind of yes that unleashes favor. That's the kind of yes that wakes the gift back up inside you and sends angels into motion. The kind of yes that picks up the crown and wears it. We find in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 11, I am coming soon. Hold fast what you have, so that no one, my Zeitze, your crown. Did you catch that? So that no one may seize your crown. Law, yes. chosen one. Your crown can be taken, not because God is cruel, but because God is just. He is not looking for the most gifted. He is looking for the most willing, and if one refuses the assignment, He will place it on another who will carry it with obedience. God doesn't beg. He invites. And what you're feeling now is not guilt, it's glory. It's God pulling on your heart, calling you deeper. Not out of condemnation, but commission. This isn't a message to scare you. It's a message to stir you, to awaken what has been slumbering for too long, because you were never meant to sit on the sidelines of your own destiny. You weren't created to watch. You were created to war. You were created to build. You were created to lead, and that requires a decision. So don't scroll past this and pretend your spirit didn't just leap. Don't dismiss this as another good word. This is a now word, a crown word, a prophetic confrontation designed to push you into purpose. And yes, there is a cost to obedience. You'll lose the approval of the passive. You'll make the comfortable uncomfortable. You'll disrupt atmospheres. You'll confuse people who only know the old you. But you will also shake nations. You will set captives free. You will walk in power that no man can grant or take. You will carry fire and not burn out. You will see the reason behind every rejection. You will finally understand why you never fit in, because you were always meant to stand out. Don't waste another season shrinking. Don't spend another year running in circles. Don't leave your crown sitting in the dirt while others fight to wear one they weren't called to carry. You are the one God called. You are the one heaven waited on. You are the one hell hoped would stay silent, but not anymore. So if this message has confirmed what your spirit's been wrestling with, don't just feel it. Act on it. Like this message as a simple act of agreement. Share it if you know someone else who's been dancing around their divine moment. And subscribe if you haven't already, because this space isn't just a feed. It's a frequency, a place where the marked ones gather, where the misfits find their mantle, where the chosen ones wake up and move forward. The crown is ready. The throne room is watching. The oil is being poured. But heaven will not wait forever. Pick up what's always been yours. There comes a moment when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop shrinking your voice to make others feel comfortable, when you stop trying to translate your calling for people who were never meant to understand it. That moment is now, because chosen ones are not chosen to be understood, they're chosen to obey. You weren't called to be explained. You were called to be sent. And sometimes being sent looks like walking away from the familiar, not because you're rebellious, but because you're obedient to a sound no one else can hear. You've spent too much time second-guessing yourself, questioning what God already confirmed, asking others to validate what He already anointed, hoping for approval from people who are more afraid of your growth than supportive of your purpose. You weren't called to convince. You were called to carry. The weight you feel isn't for debate, it's for delivery. Some will think you've changed. Some will say you've become prideful. Some will try to remind you of who you used to be. But none of their opinions change what heaven has already sealed. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be light. And light doesn't ask the darkness for permission to shine. You've already spent seasons over-explaining your obedience, over-apologizing for your fire, dumbing down your discernment so others wouldn't feel exposed in your presence. You used to believe your calling would make people clap, but now you see it often makes them scatter. That's not failure. That's fruit. The light in you disrupts every place where comfort has become an idol. You don't speak with arrogance. You speak with authority. You don't bring chaos, you bring clarity. But clarity is uncomfortable to those who've learned how to live with confusion. Your clarity makes them choose. And some people don't want to choose. They want to coast. They want to stay lukewarm and call it love. They want to flirt with purpose, but never commit. But not you. You've already paid too high a price to go back. You've already been through too much to stay quiet now. You've been refined in silence, built in hiddenness, strengthened by surrender. And now, your steps carry something different. You don't walk with ego. You walk with evidence. Evidence that the wilderness was real, that the crushing was sacred, that the pruning wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And now that fruit is starting to show. Your vision is sharper. Your discernment is deeper. Your boundaries are firmer. And your spirit is louder than your voice. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. The anointing speaks for itself. And if they still don't see it, let them go. If they still can't hear it, walk on without needing to shout. You weren't called to stay behind and babysit doubt. It is written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 25. The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. You've been dodging that snare all your life, trying to keep the peace at the expense of your purpose. Trying to be relatable when you were never meant to be common. Trying to keep connections that were meant to expire once your assignment matured. And now you feel it, the spiritual tension of transition. When God calls you higher, He also calls you away. Away from the need to explain. Away from the pull to fit in. Away from the voices that only loved you when you were convenient. Because elevation demands separation. Not to isolate you, but to insulate what God is doing in you. You are not leaving people behind. You are following the cloud. You are being led by fire. And those who are assigned to you in this next season will meet you in the obedience. Let them talk. Let them question. Let them assume. But don't let their misunderstanding make you mistrust God. You are not crazy for seeing what others can't. You're not harsh for saying what others won't. You're not arrogant for protecting your peace and your calling. This is what obedience looks like when you finally stop needing outside permission to walk in what heaven already approved. So take the next step with boldness. You don't need to explain your fire to those who are still praying for sparks. You don't need to translate your wilderness to those who never left Egypt. And you don't need to hold space in your life for people who were never meant to carry your oil. Walk forward, not with a chip on your shoulder, but with clarity in your spirit. You've obeyed quietly. You've endured silently. You've stayed faithful when it didn't make sense. Now walk fully. Right now. In this very moment. Something is being released in the spirit. Not hype. Not emotion. But fire. The kind of fire that doesn't burn you, it brands you. It marks your soul with heavenly urgency and divine focus. It doesn't feel like excitement. It feels like conviction. You're not caught up in a feeling. You're being pulled into your assignment. The weight on your chest isn't pressure, it's presence. God's presence. And where His presence is, there's movement. There's clarity. There's activation. This is a holy moment, a prophetic turning point. Because what's being poured out right now is not for the casual, not for the ones who play both sides, not for the spiritually lukewarm. It's for the ones who've been crying in secret, asking God if they still matter. It's for the ones who've been stretched beyond what they thought they could endure, yet never let go of His hand. It's for the ones who've been crushed but remained pure. You, chosen one. You are standing in the middle of a prophetic outpouring. Heaven is not looking for the loudest. It's looking for the ready. The ones who have been purified in obscurity and tested in fire. You didn't promote yourself. You didn't chase the spotlight. You stayed faithful when it hurt. You forgave when it made no sense. You served when you should have been celebrated. You kept praying even when your prayers seemed to echo back in silence. That's why this moment belongs to you. Because fire doesn't fall on the flashy, it falls on the faithful. And right now, there is a release happening. Spiritual mantles are being passed. Old callings that were dropped by others are being handed to those who will not squander them. Those who will steward the oil with purity, reverence, and obedience. Heaven is looking for hands that are open, not to grab glory, but to carry weight. You've been feeling the shift. You've had dreams you didn't understand, visions that wouldn't let you sleep, sudden tears for no reason, an ache in your spirit that can't be explained. You're not emotional. You're not unstable. You are being stirred. The Spirit of God is awakening the deep places within you. You are being summoned into alignment, and it's happening now. We read in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 17, in the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit on all people. That outpouring isn't a someday promise, it's a now reality. What you're sensing isn't imagination, it's impartation, the divine kind. And the number that confirms this moment is 444. Why? Because 444 is a prophetic number of foundation, alignment, and open doors. It represents the angels of the Lord standing at the four corners of the earth, guarding, guiding, and gathering. It's the sound of order coming to chaos. It's the symbol of heaven saying, you're in the right place, at the right time, for the right reason. So if your spirit recognizes what's happening right now, if you feel the flames of your purpose being reignited, if your soul is screaming, yes, this is for me. Comment 444 below. Not as superstition, but as declaration, as alignment, as agreement, because God doesn't force activation. He waits for your response. And Ka 100 Quarty says, I'm ready. I agree. I receive. This isn't a moment you scroll past and forget. This is the kind that follows you, that rewrites how you walk, that redefines how you pray, that makes you more sensitive to His whispers, more alert to His movements, more obedient to His word. You're not being hyped up, you're being commissioned. The fire of God is falling on the obedient ones, the postured ones, the ones who fear Him more than they fear missing out. And if you're still reading this, still sensing this, still burning in the deepest parts of your soul, then you already know you're part of this company. You were never called to be like the rest. And now the fire is waking up what religion tried to bury. It's resurrecting what trauma tried to kill. It's calling you out of shame and into strategy. You're not broken. You're chosen. You're not forgotten. You're anointed. You're not late. You're exactly on time. This moment was written into your story before you ever asked for it. And now, heaven is watching for your response. Comment 444 as your agreement, as your yes, as your entry into the flame that doesn't destroy, it defines. This is prophetic fire, and it's falling now. They're not supposed to understand you, and they won't, no matter how pure your heart is, how well-intentioned your words are, how gently you walk. There will be people who look at your fire and call it strange, who watch your obedience and call it pride, who witness your set-apart life and label it rebellion, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your spirit offends what they've settled for. That's the price of walking in truth. You become a mirror to those hiding behind filters, and most people aren't ready to be seen that clearly. It's easier to reject the mirror than to confront the compromise. But don't let that shake you. Let it confirm you. The walk of the chosen is lonely by design. You weren't built to blend in. You weren't formed in the furnace just to decorate the room. You were made to disrupt, to shift, to carry something otherworldly. That means your frequency will often feel foreign to the familiar. You'll enter rooms and feel the tension. You'll share what burns in your bones and be met with blank stares. You'll choose holiness when everyone else is choosing convenience, and they'll call it judgment. You're not judging, you're burning. You've been branded by something this world can't touch, and that mark has a cost. You've lost friends, not because of hate, but because of misalignment. You've outgrown communities that once felt like family. You've sat in circles that once celebrated you, only to find out they were only clapping for a version of you that didn't threaten their comfort. When you grew, the applause stopped. When you obeyed, the distance came. When you said yes to God, they said no to you. That's the pattern of the called. Even Jesus, full of grace, full of truth, was misunderstood by his own hometown. The Word made flesh, walking among them, and still they couldn't receive him. Why? Because the familiar blinds the flesh. The ones who watched you grow can't always handle the one you've grown into. They remember the wounds. God sees the oil. You're not meant to prove them wrong. You're meant to move on. You've spent too much time trying to convince people to love a version of you that no longer exists. The one who stayed silent to keep the peace. The one who hid the visions, who swallowed the fire, who tried to explain why God kept waking you up at 3 a.m. with downloads too heavy for your own heart. That version of you was never fake. It was in process. But that version is gone now. You're not in hiding anymore. You're in harvest. And with harvest comes exposure. Exposure to misunderstanding. Exposure to criticism. Exposure to isolation. But exposure also means fruit. The kind that proves itself over time. The kind that can't be argued with. The kind that silences every accusation, not with a fight but with evidence. The Word of God declares in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 16, "You will know them by their fruits." End of. So let them talk. Let them misunderstand your silence. Let them question your obedience. Let them roll their eyes when you say no to what they've normalized. You don't need to explain what God has sealed. You don't owe anyone a tour through the wilderness. He walked you through. You carry fruit now, and fruit doesn't argue, it remains. You've been through too much to keep watering dead spaces. You've outgrown the version of you that needed to be liked. That version couldn't carry what you carry now. The you who needs approval has no room for the oil. The you who feared rejection has no space for revelation. And the you who needed understanding has no capacity for full surrender. So God, let the separation happen, not to punish you, but to protect your becoming. Now, you walk with quiet strength. You've learned how to hear God in the silence, how to obey without applause, how to love without expecting loyalty in return. You've learned to live for the well done of heaven, not the clapping of men. That kind of obedience builds foundations that storms cannot shake. You are becoming the kind of person that makes the unseen world tremble, the kind of person whose posture speaks louder than 1,000 explanations, the kind of person whose very presence exposes what's fake. You don't need to raise your voice to shift the room anymore. Your alignment does that. So breathe deep. You were never meant to be understood by all. You were meant to be obedient to one. And that obedience will cost you the crowd, but it will crown you in glory. Rejection didn't destroy you. It refined you. Every time someone walked away, every time a door slammed shut, every time a conversation turned cold without reason, it wasn't just life happening. It was the hand of God removing attachments that could not walk with your assignment. You didn't lose them. You were led away from them. And though it felt like loss in the moment, it was mercy in disguise. Some of the people you wanted to keep would have choked the very thing God was trying to birth in you. Not because they were evil, because they were incompatible. Purpose has a frequency, and when someone refuses to tune in, God will begin to separate the signal. And you felt that separation. You didn't want to be the one who grew distant. You didn't want the silence. You didn't choose to feel left out. You wanted connection, loyalty, understanding, but instead, you found silence, betrayal, and delay. And for a while, you thought something was wrong with you. You wondered if you were the problem. You wondered if maybe you weren't built for community. Or maybe your heart was just too sensitive. But what if the rejection was actually revelation? What if the heartbreak wasn't meant to break you, but to build you into someone who no longer relied on man's approval to validate heaven's voice? What if every betrayal was God answering a prayer you didn't know how to pray? You asked for purpose, but didn't know purpose would cost you people. You asked for clarity, not realizing clarity would blind those who refused to walk in light. Now you see it. What once looked like abandonment was actually elevation. What once felt like heartbreak was really heaven making space. What once felt like isolation was God's invitation to meet him alone. You weren't being punished. You were being purified. Because what's coming next couldn't afford the distractions of what used to be. There are certain kinds of oil that only flow in the crushing, certain revelations that only come after the rupture, certain levels of obedience that only emerge after every earthly voice has been stripped away. And now, you walk differently. You move slower, but with more precision. You trust less, but you love deeper. You speak less, but you carry more. There is glory in the rejection. The pain produced something no platform could give you. It formed the roots of resilience, the muscle of discernment, the eye to see truth behind smiles. You can no longer be manipulated. You no longer chase the counterfeit. You no longer beg for scraps when you carry bread. Because now you know who you are. And more importantly, you know whose you are. It is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 118, verse 22. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. No, reread that. The stone the builders rejected, that's you. They saw you, scanned you, measured you, and decided you didn't fit their structure. You were too honest, too sharp, too deep, too different, too sensitive, too prophetic. So they passed you over. But what they rejected, God has selected. What they walked away from, heaven is now raising up. The builders may have walked by, but the architect never did. God saw the cracks and said, "Perfect. I'll build my glory here." You are not broken beyond use. You are broken into purpose. The wilderness did what the crowd never could. It gave you language for pain, vision in silence, and authority in loneliness. You don't just know about warfare, you've survived it. You don't just quote scripture, you clung to it when it was all you had. You don't just carry words, you carry weight. And that weight came from wounds that heaven has turned into weapons. So don't mourn who left. Bless them, not sarcastically, not bitterly, but from a place of peace, because they were part of your process, not your permanence. They were permitted for a season, not assigned for the calling. You can love them and let them go. You can forgive them and still move forward. Obedience sometimes looks like healing in private, without inviting the past to re-enter the room. You're not the same person they left behind. You've outgrown old cycles. You've broken free from old expectations. You've risen from places they never thought you would. And you don't need to announce your elevation. Just keep walking, keep building, keep obeying. The glory they couldn't see is the glory God is now about to reveal. And it started the moment they said you weren't enough. You are not here by accident. The fact that you're still reading, still listening, still leaning in, is proof that your spirit recognizes this frequency. You've been searching, waiting, praying, hoping for something real, and now you've found it. Not a person, not a platform, but a confirmation, a spiritual echo that what you carry is not just weight, it's glory, and it's time to walk in it fully. This space, it's not just content, it's not just messages, it's not just nice words. This is a tribe, a remnant, a gathering place for those who have been marked in the dark, hidden in the fire, and called to rise in the light. And if your heart is pounding and your eyes are burning, that's not emotion, that's activation. You don't need another sign. You are the sign, the evidence that God still raises up the ones the world forgot. You've felt it coming. You've sensed the shift. You've seen the signs in your life, relationships fading, old cravings dying, deep hunger for more. That's not coincidence. That's divine tension. God pulling you out of old cycles and preparing you for impact. You were not created to wander. You were created to war. You were not born to bow to culture. You were born to confront it with kingdom. And if that truth has been stirring in, you don't keep it to yourself. There are others like you, others still in hiding, others who think they're crazy, too intense, too sensitive, too deep, others who have no idea that the heaviness they carry is actually a call. Share this word with them. Let this be the thing that pulls them out of the pit and into purpose, because this is not just a message. This is a mantle, a weight of responsibility, a call to action, a trumpet blast in the spirit that says, "You were born for this hour." And that's why it matters that you stay connected, not to be trendy, not for likes, but because the days ahead are not for the distracted. You need spaces that keep your flame alive, environments that speak to your spirit, not just your feelings. You need alignment with voices that challenge your complacency and remind you who you are. So if you haven't yet subscribed, not to a channel, but to your calling, click that button, because your spirit is saying yes. Because your next season demands clarity, not chaos, purpose, not popularity, fire, not fluff. And like this message, if it struck something deep inside you, not for the algorithm, but as an act of agreement, as a sign to heaven that you hear what's being said, that you're no longer tiptoeing around your assignment. You're ready to move. And if you know someone walking through the same fire, share this. Don't overthink it. Obedience doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be willing. Someone else is waiting to be reminded that they are not alone. Lastly, comment below. Right here. Right now. Let this be the moment you step forward with fire and say it out loud. I will obey. End of. Type it. Speak it. Seal it. Because obedience is the doorway to the outpouring, and what's coming next is going to require a posture that says, yes, Lord, whatever it costs. End of. You've been hidden long enough. Now the oil must be poured. Now the word must be spoken. Now the move must begin. And you don't need to do it perfectly, you just need to do it purely. Because when purity meets obedience, glory follows. Scripture says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 19, if you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. That's not a motivational phrase. That's a promise, a divine covenant. Willingness and obedience unlock the blessing, and you've been through too much to miss what's ahead. You didn't cry all those tears just to walk away from the table when your name is finally being called. So come forward. This is your space, your tribe, your moment, and we are standing with you not to perform, but to prepare, not to entertain, but to equip. This is the sacred intersection of glory and grit, where people like you finally rise. The misfits, the rejected, the prophets without microphones, the intercessors who prayed through hell, the ones who stayed when others ran, the ones who obeyed with no spotlight, no applause, no reward until now, because heaven saw it all, and heaven is responding. So again, if this message spoke to your soul, like it, share it, comment. I will obey. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay aligned. Stay alert. Stay on fire. We're just getting started. This tribe isn't for the many, it's for the marked. The world is crying out. And it's not crying out for celebrities. It's not crying out for influencers, motivational speakers, or polished performances. It's crying out for the real ones, the holy ones, the set-apart ones, the chosen ones who have been hidden in silence, refined in suffering, and commissioned by heaven, not by man. The world doesn't even know it yet, but it's starving for people like you. It's aching for the sound of clarity, for voices that don't echo culture, but confront it, for hands that heal without demanding a stage, for hearts that love without agenda. You've been looking around, wondering why the atmosphere feels so heavy, why the conversations feel so empty, why the places you used to enjoy now leave you drained. It's because your spirit can no longer tolerate what your calling is designed to disrupt. You weren't made to adjust to the decay. You were made to answer it. You weren't built to blend in. You were born to build again, to be a repairer of broken walls, a restorer of old ruins, a voice of fire in a generation drowning in noise. That's why you can't escape the tension. That's why you feel the urgency, even when nothing's wrong around you. That's why you carry a weight in your soul that can't be explained, not to friends, not to family, not even to yourself sometimes. But God knows, and heaven is watching. Creation itself is groaning. As Scripture says, not for perfection, not for performance, but for the revealing of the sons and daughters of God. This isn't poetic, it's prophetic. This world is gasping for the presence of those who walk in truth, who live in holiness, who fear the Lord more than they fear losing followers, and who carry glory, even if it costs them everything else. That's you. You've been through too much to fake it now. You've walked through fire that no one else saw, fought demons in the dark with no one to call, and yet you're still standing, still breathing, still burning. That's not coincidence. That's evidence. Because while others were being platformed, you were being planted. You weren't skipped. You were hidden. Hidden so deeply that the world forgot your name. But heaven never did. And now, the earth is calling for the hidden ones to emerge. Not with noise, but with power. Not with performance, but with purity. Not with vanity, but with vision. Because this generation doesn't need more hype. It needs holiness. It doesn't need more programs. It needs presence. And presence doesn't come from personality. It comes from the secret place. That's why God called you deeper. That's why He wrecked your plans. That's why He dried up the old sources. He wasn't punishing you. He was positioning you. You asked Him to use you. But you didn't know that the oil required an altar. And now you're walking with oil that didn't come cheap. Oil that came through loss, through unanswered prayers, through obedience that cost you your comfort, through prayers you didn't even know how to form, but somehow heaven heard them anyway. You don't carry cheap oil. You carry the kind that shifts nations. And while others are chasing moments, you're being called to steward movements. While others are building platforms, you're being called to build altars. While others are performing revival, you're being called to live it. It is written in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 19, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." Revealed, not created, not invented, not manufactured. Revealed because they were already there. That's you. You've always been chosen. You've always been marked. You've always been the answer to someone's silent cry. But it had to be revealed. And revelation requires a process, a wilderness, a crushing, a moment like this where your identity is no longer up for debate. The veil is lifting, and the earth is not waiting for someone else. It's waiting for you to stop hiding, to stop rehearsing your pain like it's your destiny, to stop questioning what God already confirmed, to stop waiting for a stage and start walking in the Spirit. You don't need everyone to see it. You just need to step into it. Because you're not just the answer to your own breakthrough. You are the answer to someone else's bondage. You are the sound that will awaken others. You are the light that will lead people out. You are the one they didn't expect, but exactly the one God appointed. Chosen one. The earth is groaning, and it's groaning for you. This is the final wave, not of fear, not of judgment, but of decision, the moment where mercy, glory, and truth collide, and you are standing right in the center of it. Heaven is not whispering anymore. It's roaring. Every sign, every stirring, every sleepless night, every spiritual dream, it has all been leading here. This is the moment where eternity leans in and watches what you will do with what you now know, not in condemnation, but in clarity, because once you've heard the truth, you can't unhear it. Once you've seen your reflection in the fire, you can't go back to pretending you're just like everyone else. You're not. You are one rebellion away from blindness, one delay away from disobedience, one compromise away from a spiritual numbness that doesn't always feel like sin, it feels like slow decay. And that's why this moment matters more than all the others before it. Because this is the final warning wrapped in final grace, releasing final glory. Final doesn't mean frantic. Final doesn't mean frantic. Final means full, complete, sealed. What God is doing in this moment isn't rushed. It's refined. He's not looking for urgency born from fear. He's looking for surrender born from revelation. And here is the revelation. You are responsible for what you now carry. No more pretending. No more spiritual excuses. No more delay disguised as discernment. The days of waiting for the perfect moment are over. You've been warned. You've been awakened. Now you must walk. Even if your knees are shaking. Even if your hands tremble. Even if no one else comes with you. Because obedience is not about the crowd, it's about the cross. And for you, chosen one, the cross has always been close. You've felt the weight of it before you even had words for it. You've lived through betrayals that felt prophetic. You've endured silence that trained your spirit more than sermons ever could. You've been carrying something for years that the world said was too heavy. But God knew was holy, and now He's calling for it. He's calling for your full yes. Not the version coated in fear, not the one laced with conditions. The kind of yes that costs something, because that is the yes that carries glory. And make no mistake, there will be a cost. There will be people who can no longer walk with you. Circles that close without explanation. Opportunities that vanish. Moments where you question everything because the pruning cuts deep. But after the cut comes the crown. And what God is pruning now, He is doing to make room for the weight that's about to fall on your life. This is not a calling for comfort. This is a calling to consecration. Your private obedience is about to carry public consequence. The kind of consequence that shifts atmospheres, breaks chains, and causes heaven to move. The kind of obedience that may never get applause, but will echo through generations. Because you're not just living for this moment. You're living to leave something eternal behind. We read in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 29, "For our God is a consuming fire." End of 4. And that fire is burning now not to destroy you, but to define you, to separate everything that no longer belongs, to burn off what's been holding you back, to purify your motives, to test your foundations, to ignite what's been dormant for too long. That fire doesn't need a crowd. It just needs a vessel, a surrendered heart, a listening ear, a willing soul, you. And once it touches you, nothing stays the same. You'll begin to speak with a voice you didn't know you had. You'll begin to discern with clarity you never earned. You'll begin to carry a presence that turns atmospheres upside down, not because of who you are, but because of who He is in you. This is not the end. It's the beginning of a new mantle, a new rhythm, a new responsibility. This is not the moment to disappear back into normal. This is the moment to step into holy visibility. Not performance, not pride, but presence. You are no longer invisible to heaven. You are no longer stuck in cycles. You are no longer in hiding. You are marked. Walk out of this message different than you walked in. Not because of emotion, but because of encounter, because heaven has spoken, and now it's your turn to respond. You know who you are now. You know what you carry, and you know what time it is. This is the final wave. Walk in it. You made it. Through every word, every section, every confrontation with truth, you stayed. And that alone says something powerful about who you are. You are not casual. You are not confused. You are not curious. You are called. This wasn't just a script. It was a summons to rise, to return, to remember, and now to respond. You carry something this world desperately needs. You are the echo someone else has been praying for. You are the answer hidden in plain sight. And now that you've heard, now that you've seen, you cannot go back to sleep. You are officially accountable to the weight of what you carry. And yes, it's heavy, but it's holy. So if this message confirmed what's been stirring in your spirit, do what chosen ones do. Move with purpose. Like this message to mark the moment. Share it with someone who's walking through the fire and doesn't know they're being refined. Comment below, even one word. A yes, an amen, a flame. Let your voice be counted. And above all, if you haven't already, subscribe, because what's coming next will demand deeper clarity, deeper connection, and deeper courage. This isn't a feed. It's a frequency for the ones who are done playing small. The activation has begun. You are marked. You are not late. You are not invisible. You are chosen, and we are just getting started.